Hey guys, Q here, and I am pissed at myself for getting the math wrong in the last video. For some reason, my stupid brain decided to drop a 0 in the math and gave the false impression that priming gems were less effective than priming tiles. Well, here's the corrected chart. Before I continue, this chart is only as accurate as my human brain. If you are mathematically inclined, please feel free to check my math. So, this is the chart explaining how many points you get per hour based on the resource. As you can see, the collection rate and points gained are the same ratio for each of the regular resources: lumber, grain, iron, and silver. So the only difference you need to be aware of is the difference between collecting resources versus collecting gems. This video will not go over monster kill points, wishes, or drunken wizard. We're looking purely at the comparison between resources and gems. Anyway, as you can see, without any collection buffs, gems are the most valuable way of getting points. At 3 gems an hour, you get a total of 7,200 points per hour, as opposed to the measly 5,400 you get from resources. The difference, however, is in the collection speed buffs and heroes. It is much easier to increase your collection speed for resources than it is with gems. Although with the new update, there are skills that even out the playing field a bit, giving you substantial buffs to your gem collection speed. In most cases, you will probably have a better resource collection speed buff than a gem collection speed buff. But we're not going to get into skills and lord levels, we're going based on the math. The point is that by simply using a resource spell, which increases your collection rate by 50%, you will already surpass the points per hour for gems, bumping the resource collection points per hour up to 8,100. So unless you have some crazy gem collection speed upgrades, collecting regular resources during Phase 1 of Tournament of Kingdoms is probably going to yield a better value for you. Now, to clarify, this is collecting during the phase, not priming tiles, which we'll go over in a bit. Now, there is one exception. There's a couple exceptions to this. Exception 1, if you are planning on using a point card or 2. If you skill and stat prioritizing gem farming during the phase, you can send out all your gem farmers all at the same time after cashing in the primers, and then near the end of the phase, pop a point card and use Urgent Recall. Your point card will apply to the full day of gem farming. This exception, however, does completely depend on your collection speed buffs for each resources, how many point cards you want to use, and of course, the value of those cards. Now, math will yield your answer, but since everyone is different, you'll have to do that yourself. You can shout out to me in the comments, and I'd be happy to figure out which would be more efficient for you based on your current or potential stats. The second exception to this, of course, is the availability of tiles. If you are going to sleep for the night and you have no super tiles available to you, it is more valuable to send to a gem tile while you're sleeping. With a 30% collection buff of a level 8 resource tile, you will finish it in under 8 hours, leaving wasted time when your troops are back in the castle and not being sent out. Whereas gem tiles will always take longer and give you more consistent points for those periods of 4 or more hours when you will not be online to send your troops back out after they come back. So that covers how to make the most out of your farming and collection during Phase 1 of the Tournament of Kingdoms. But let's look at how to properly prime for Phase 1 Tournament of Kingdoms and maximize your points. Okay, so let's look at priming. Priming is a way for you to start mining a tile before the beginning of Phase 1. but in a way so that your troops don't come back until after the phase begins, and you can get points for resources that you technically mined before the phase began. For the purpose of this video, I'll refer to these as primers. Now to prime effectively, you'll need to know your collection speed buffs. Since there are so many factors in figuring out what your collection speed buffs are, such as alliance techs, research, VIP, magic tower, blah blah blah, we're going to first look at how long it takes to finish a tile with no speed increases, meaning the maximum time it will take to finish a tile. Now, as I mentioned before, all resource tiles of the same level will finish at the same time and yield the same points. So the differences you want to look at are the differences between resources and gems, and of course the level of the tile. As you can see, the base stats, with base stats, a level 8 resource tile will finish in 9 hours and 40 minutes. Level 7, 7 hours and 20 minutes. Level 6, 5 hours and 20 minutes. And I didn't go further than that, since the fact that you're watching this video, you're probably not going to be farming a resource tile lower than level 6. Now, for argument's sake, let's look at level 7 tiles again. We're looking at everything with base stats for now. A level 7 resource tile will finish in 7 hours and 20 minutes and yield 39,600 points. A level 7 gem tile will finish in 43 hours and 20 minutes, but yield 312,000 points. So, if I were to send primers out to a level 7 resource tile 7 hours before the event starts, it would come back with 39,600 points. However, if I send a primer out to a level 7 gem tile 43 hours before the event starts, it would come back after the phase has started and yield 312,000 points. So it's pretty obvious here that priming gem tiles is going to give you a lot more benefit than priming regular resource tiles. But here's the wrench, is I highly doubt that anyone watching this video has no speed buffs from at least research or alliance technologies. So the question is, how do you figure out how long it will take you to finish a tile so that it doesn't end up coming back too early? Again, the only reason priming is effective is if they come back after the phase has started. Well, to do this, first you need to find your base stat buffs. And there's an easy way to do this, but there are 5 things you want to do first before looking at your final buff percentage. First thing you want to do is make sure you do not have any temporary buffs on your castle. So the first thing you want to check is your magic tower. Go to the magic tower, tap on it, tap magic, tap individual magic, and look at your collection spell. On the collection spell, it will tell you how long your collection spell buff lasts. So for mine it says 5 hours. So if it's in cooldown, you'll have to subtract that time from 24 hours and make sure that the remaining cooldown time is less than that. So for mine, I take the 5 hours, 24 minus 5 is 19, so as long as I have less than 19 hours left on the cooldown, then I know that that collection spell is no longer active. That way, I can make sure that my magic tower collection speed buff isn't active. If your collection spell is still active, you'll have to subtract the percentage of your increase from the final number to get the accurate buff. So 10%, I would, when I find my final number, I'd subtract the 10% from that. The second thing to check is if you have any resource spells that are active. Now, the easiest way to do this is either on the kingdom screen or while you're inside your castle. Simply tap the castle and tap on City Bonus. And look at the section for Resource Spell to make sure there is no countdown on it. If there is a countdown or status bar, that means that you have a resource spell active and you'll have to subtract 50% from your final number to get an accurate buff percentage. The third thing you want to check is your Institute to make sure that you are not actively researching anything that may increase your collection speed when you don't want it to. You can do this simply by looking at the Institute, and it should give you the status. Or if you want to be sure, tap on your Institute, tap on Research, tap on the circle that is glowing with the blue aura, and look for the tech that has the symbols rotating around it. Now obviously this is only going to be if you are researching something. And tap that to see if the tech that you're researching will affect collection speed. If not, then you're good to go. But if it is, then it would take a bit of complicated math to figure out when and how much it will increase your rate. It's better just to make sure that you're not researching anything that increases your collection rate when you're trying to figure out how long it'll take you to finish a tile. The fourth thing, the fourth thing, before you check your buff, you're going to want to check your skills, or reskill and set the skills you want to keep on for the duration of the priming. In most cases, you do not want to send out primers and then change your skill set while they are mining, as it will likely change the time it takes them to finish and may screw you over, and it may make them finish before the phase begins. A couple other considerations you want to keep in mind are heroes. The collection speed buffs from certain heroes, well, all heroes essentially, but particularly things like Braith, Lenny, Thrung, their collection speed buffs do apply to gems as well. So if you're going to be sending a hero to a tile that you're priming, you need to make sure that you calculate those speed buffs as well to get an accurate time. In addition to that, you depending on where the tile is affects how your speed is. So if you have alliance techs that affect your collection rate, you will get an increased collection rate for mining tiles if your tile is inside your alliance territory. So whereas, let's say my collection rate for a tile that is not in the alliance territory is going to be 69,100 per hour, whereas my collection rate for the same level and same type of tile inside my alliance territory would be 69,100 per hour plus 5,400 per hour based on the alliance techs and alliance bonuses. So you want to make sure that you're factoring that in, especially when you're priming your gems. You want to make sure that when you're calculating your times, you don't send to a tile that is inside your alliance territory and screw yourself over by finishing off too early. So after you've checked all those four things, you can find your collection speed buff, your final number, by simply tapping on your avatar at the top left. Tap the blue exclamation point near your helm and pants toward the top right, and scroll down to the resources section. This will show you your current collection speed bonuses for each resource and gems. This screen can also help you decide which resource to mine during the phase, as previously discussed, to get the most points. So in there you have your final number. You take the percentage and you subtract any active buffs you have, and make sure you're not researching anything that will change the buff. You have your final number. To figure out how long it'll take you to finish a tile, all you need to do is some math. Luckily for you, I already did a lot of the math for you. So, to use the example before, if I want to prime a level 7 grain tile, Let's say my grain collection speed buff is 68%. I'm going to use this chart and use the time that is shorter. Unless you want to do the math and figure out the exact time, if your percent is between two of the numbers I have displayed here, you always want to use the time that is shorter, just in case so it doesn't come back too early. But back to it. A level 7 grain tile with a 68% collection buff, I'm going to use the 70% figure, and it'll take a little more than 4.31 hours to finish and come back. But let's look at the other example. For a level 7 gem tile, let's say I have a 19% gem collection speed bonus. Well, I'm going to use the 20% and assume that it will take a little more than 27.78 hours to finish mining that tile. So, I will figure out how long before phase 1 is 27.78 hours and set an alarm to make sure I send out my troops to the tiles at that time. Let's say I send out 5 dispatches to level 7 gem tiles at 27.78 hours before the start of phase 1. And let's say I use a 100% point card right before they finish. I'll net 3,120,000 just from priming. Within the first half an hour of the phase, I will have over 3 million points. So that's it. I know this is a long video, but once you do it, as long as you have the buff chart, it's actually pretty easy for you to figure out and maximize your points. If you want to figure out the exact time it will take to finish, if you want to figure out the exact time it will take you to finish a tile, use the formula here. Here's the math formula that, how long it takes you to finish a tile, if you want to, or if you want to check my math. But that's about it. And that's the long version of how to do resource mining during phase 1 of Tournament of Kingdoms, and priming to maximize your points. That's about it. I'm the Strategic Gamer, and I hope it helps.